It is. We're getting a lot done though.
We're getting a lot done. So I'm happy to have Amanda LaRose with us today. She is the owner of We Care Management, and Mary Beth is one of her clinical social workers. And we're going to have a conversation with her about the importance of really keeping an eye on our parents and options for teletherapy and some other things that might be available to families that they're not aware of currently.
That's awesome. I think this is going to be a great topic, especially as people are feeling the effects of being isolated and understanding how they can help caregivers, who are feeling isolated and under more pressure than ever.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm going to bring them in on the screen and get this conversation going.
Awesome. Hey, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, Mary Beth.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
Doing okay. Doing okay.
Good. So we're having a little technical difficulty, but I think we got it figured out. I'm excited to talk about this. Amanda, you and I have had many conversations recently about caregivers in this current climate. And so I think this conversation is pretty timely. So why don't you take a second and tell us about We Care Management, and then we'll kind of get into the conversation.
Sure. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate this opportunity. So We Care Management has been in existence for 3.5 years now, and it started off as a care management business, which is providing in-home care coordination for older persons, helping to support the caregivers. And then over the years, as a licensed clinical social worker, I have been providing emotional support, not only to older persons, but their caregivers, mostly adult children, but also neighbors and hired care providers. And what we're doing now is we are going into assisted living communities, private homes, independent living communities, and providing counseling support.
Awesome.
That's great. That's great. So the Alzheimer's Caregivers Alliance is a community of the Windward Foundation. And you know that our foundation was put in place to help ease the burden of caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease at home. So we have caregivers across the country who are now, through this whole experience we're going through now with the COVID-19, experiencing some new challenges. And that's what that's what we thought we would talk about today. Some of the challenges that they're dealing with and how you might be able to help and how we might be able to help. So again, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
So Amanda, it's interesting. Things are changing by the hour, right? I mean, you read the news in the morning and you read the news at night, and it's a totally different thing. Mm-hmm. And more states are extending, the social distancing. Virginia just announced a couple of days ago that they're actually extending it out to June 10th, right? And I think that's the longest one in the U.S., the longest state. So, what do you think the effect is of social isolation going to have on the mental health of and being a caregiver?
I think there's a few things that are going to make a huge impact. And the first is that the caregivers, a lot of them rely on other supports. So whether it's hired help, family help, house cleaners, even, all of those support systems that the caregiver themselves has, they are probably not going to be able to have most of those, if not all of them. And so what happens then is they are overburdened even more so than they already are. And there's a lot more caregiver stress and caregiver burnout, and that affects their overall mental health. With that being said, I think that the mental health of the caregiver is going to probably it's going to be struggling now during this time more than ever, because they're not able to get out of the house really. They are not able to really have breaks, and a lot of times they'll have increased loneliness because they won't be having interactions with the people that they usually do. And, so those are some of the first things that come to mind. But I think the other thing is for the caregivers that have someone, a loved one in a community and they're not able to visit, it's going to bring a lot of worry and anxiety in them, and also loneliness and those type of things. But, the anxiety and worry is going to be huge because, as we know, older persons are most vulnerable to this illness. And there's so many people coming in and out of the caregiving homes, the communities. And so I think that the anxiety and worry is going to be really heightened during this time, unfortunately.
Amanda, I completely agree. And Sean made a comment that, what we're hearing is all about social distancing. We all have to social distance, but when it comes to our aging population and these caregivers that are at home, and they've been caring for their loved one all these months and now they can't go visit them, from either side, it's really social isolation for them. They're completely isolated. Our mom is in a independent living situation right now, and they are on lockdown in their apartment. They can no longer leave their apartment. So even things like, aside from the socialization, exercise and some of the things that they might have done, meeting their friends to do crafts or, those type of things that kind of help with their emotional well-being are now like locked down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so not
people in general, let alone the caregivers that have all these responsibilities. I have 3 daughters, and they don't have a lot of responsibilities, but it's hard on everybody. But having now to take care, you've been taking care of somebody, and even the stress of protecting them because they are at high risk is just, it's got to be overwhelming.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's not just the anxiety, but a lot of sadness and potentially causing depression. And so those are all things that we just really need to be aware about.
So Mary Beth, as a clinical social worker and a therapist that specializes in the aging population, what can caregivers do to help themselves under these circumstances?
I think a lot of kind of going off what Amanda was just saying a little bit too. One, I think just being very aware of the symptoms of the anxiety, the depression, knowing what they're feeling, what they're dealing with. They are isolated, they can't get out of their homes, but still trying to, if you're the caregiver in the home with someone, still trying to find that routine of finding that time or that space where you can decompress, where you can have some of the separation and have that respite. A lot of caregivers that have a loved one at home with them, their loved one may be out during the day at adult daycare. They may be, the caregivers may work at times. So they've had those respite opportunities that they're no longer having. So I think trying to find ways to do that within the home is really important for the caregivers. It could be something as simple as, taking time to read a book, to watch a movie, even if it's with your loved one. I think about going back to old photo albums, things like that. Just trying to keep some kind of routine in the home. Like Amanda, you had said earlier, a lot of the caregivers from home health agencies, people like that coming into the homes that can no longer come into the home. I know I've worked with families encouraging them to have a plan also, kind of a backup plan. If something should happen to the caregiver might be going in and out of the home, the caregiver may get sick. I'm trying to decrease the anxiety, the overall stress that's going on in the house.
I think another emotion that we kind of forget about is the guilt too, right? So many families of the caregivers, perhaps it's been very recent that they put their loved one into an assisted living or a memory care situation. And part of their plan was that they would continue to visit every single day. So, many caregivers, continue once a day, twice a day to go to the assisted living and the memory care. And they're feeling so guilty that they're not there. And that's just adding more stress.
Yeah, I think Oh, go ahead.
I would say technology, even like what we're doing right here, is a great tool if it's accessible as well. Keeping up with FaceTime, video chat, any kind of communication that they can have with the families.
Yeah, we find that also, with our mom right now, they're in complete lockdown. Last week the building was locked down. Now they're locked down to their rooms, and they can't even go down to the dining room with other friends in the building. So, and I think that it's incumbent upon, the caregivers' extended support to be intentional, right, about reaching out to them. And I know I could do a better job, right, of reaching out to my mom, but using technology and just talking to them every single day. So we hear a lot from families and adult children who are feeling really helpless during this time. So what do you think are some red flags that, people should be looking for, and how do you encourage an overwhelmed caregiver to use things like teletherapy?
I would say that some of the signs that things are starting to become more of a struggle would be increased sleep, not eating as well or eating too much and unhealthy things, increased negative statements, more worry, and even sometimes they start getting confused because they're not sleeping well, because they're not eating right. So they might be more forgetful. They might not be keeping track of things. So, those are really the most notable things that you can tell by phone, since a lot of these family members are not seeing their loved ones in person. And then the topic of how to encourage caregivers to speak with someone, and especially via teletherapy, is a tough one. However, Mary Beth and I have had a lot of experience in starting off by talking to them about having an additional person to be able to talk to, especially during this time of isolation. Just one more person to talk to and to be able to interact with. You can even talk to us by phone. There have been laws passed that teletherapy, mental health therapy can be done by phone if that's the only thing that's accessible for someone who doesn't have internet or isn't used to using the internet and electronics and things like that, FaceTime and everything. We can do telephone therapy. It's not the same as face-to-face, but it can be a great in-between. But we are also providing teletherapy, and Mary Beth and I have been using it for a long time now, including the other clinicians that I have in my practice. And teletherapy is very much like what we're doing now. So, it's a video chat and you're able to see the person. And as a clinician, that's really helpful because a lot of times people don't verbally express emotions, but they do in their facial expressions. I myself wear my emotions on my face. So that's how the teletherapy can be really helpful. And, it's encouraging them to try it out one time. Just give it one time, and try it once and see how it goes. You don't have to keep doing it. Just try it and see.
So I wonder, I can only use my mom or think of, my mom about this. When my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, she had no interest whatsoever in a support group or looking really to anyone else for support. I think part of it was she didn't really want to talk about it. But I know there's got to be a lot of people that are kind of in this situation where they're from a generation where you kind of don't air your dirty laundry, right? And you keep everything to yourself and everything is very private. So how can families kind of try to break through that, especially from a distance, when, I really think that teletherapy, an option, that as an option is a powerful tool to families right now. Because who else are they going to, share what they're going through?
Right. Mm-hmm. My suggestion for that situation would be to make it more general than about the problems, because the biggest thing, or the first barrier to overcome is that we're strangers to these people. And so building the relationship first and foremost. So for example, an adult child might say, Michelle, for your example with your mom, you might say, maybe you should just talk to Amanda about your day-to-day. Again, it's someone to talk to, and you don't have to talk to her about the problems, just get to know her. And she's a really interesting person, and you're an interesting person. So, just engage in conversation and see where it goes, just like you would anyone else. And then as the relationship builds, it just happens naturally that the older persons start opening up more, and they may have had a really bad day and I caught them at just the right time, and they need someone to talk to, and they're probably not going to share everything, their inner, most deepest feelings and thoughts, but they'll start opening up more, and they'll realize that it's a safe place, and that afterwards, even though they might feel emotionally exhausted, that they are feeling a little sense of relief. So that's kind of what I've found anyways to be a really helpful segue.
I think the interesting thing about having an independent, someone like you, is that, and I think we experienced this with our mom, is that in the end, we're her children, we're trying to support her, but she's still our mom, right? And she doesn't want to be a burden to us. She doesn't want to put more on our plate. So she's probably feeling a sense of she doesn't want to talk about certain things with us because, as a mother to the children, they want to protect their children, right? So they may be keeping things. So the nice thing about having an independent person like you is that there's not that relationship. So they kind of can unload, right? And not feel like they're putting a burden on someone that they care about, because the people that are supporting these caregivers are they're part of the family too. And there's a lot of cross, guilt going on there. But when an independent comes in, that person like you guys can be really a voice of almost like a one-way, dialogue where they can, without any kind of guilt or, so I think it's really interesting.
Exactly.
It can present us a safe place for someone to talk to, kind of, talking about the guilt and no judgment. I think any caregiver with their children, children aren't necessarily judging, but I think if you were the role you were just talking about, that's alleviated if they can talk to someone like us who's, unfamiliar, away from the situation. And there is no judgment there. It's a safe, guilt-free place to talk about things.
Yeah, I know.
Even just to process things.
Yeah, I know when my dad, was, towards the end of his illness and was still living with my mom, she would call me. I could tell it would really hit a high point or low point when she would call me, because she used to tell me, she's like, well, I don't call you because I don't want to bother you. You have young kids, and and I'm like, Mom, I want you to call me all the time. If you have an issue, call me. But she was like, oh no, you got your own problems, and that's just not good.
No, I think that's another generational thing, don't you think? Like we open up, we tell people we love them, we are all about, showing our emotions, and, our parents were not like that at all. You never ever doubted you were loved. I never doubted I was loved by my parents, but it wasn't something that they just talked about, so our dad was very private. They were both very private. So I think someone like that, it would pose a greater challenge trying to get a therapist to get them to open up to therapy. But I honestly think they need it the most, they really need it the most. So, getting a conversation started with adult children and family members, especially if they've got any kind of concerns, is so important. Just get the conversation started, and maybe it won't happen overnight, but if we can get them to understand that there are people they can talk to, and like Sean said, if they're not family, maybe they would open up a little bit quicker. I'm not sure
Well, and sometimes it does help to offer, Michelle, using your example again, you know, to offer, if they are really kind of struggling with the idea, why don't I either go with you for the first appointment, if possible, right? If you're within close proximity, or why don't I make the first call for you, you know, or those type of things, you know, or maybe I can be on the teletherapy with you, you know, to help ease that. And I'll tell you, I've had a number of clients who have done this, and it's been really, really helpful. So again, it depends on the person. And what I would recommend is that the clinician themselves, so whether it's myself, Mary Beth, or someone else, the adult child can kind of give an overview when they're maybe talking to the clinician to introduce this idea, give an overview of the older person and, you know, their tendencies, their struggles, those type of things. And then the clinician can help problem solve and help come up with an approach that would maybe work. And you can give feedback to us, and we can kind of make a plan together. And we've done that, and it's been really, really helpful because, you know, we're kind of starting from square one, and there's so many different approaches that we can take. It's helpful, comforting approaches.
So I think it's good to know that families can be included in this, not that they have to, right? I think that was a question. You answered it before I got to ask it, but, you know, families, especially during this time, if you're, you know, you're in a different state or you're down the street, but you can't have access to your parent, maybe they would feel better knowing that you could be there with them, and it would give them some sense of security. And so it's good to know that that is, like, I wasn't sure with HIPAA how that works.
So they can give us information. And if the older person is willing to have the conversation with the family member and the clinician, then that's completely fine. But let's say, Michelle, you wanted to talk to me first to kind of give me an overview of what you're seeing or what you're struggling with, right? As an adult child, then you can always give us information. But if once we start seeing the older person and they are our client, without their permission, we cannot just give you information unless they were at harm, you know, something was happening to them that caused us concern that they couldn't take care of themselves or something. That's something different, but it's very rare.
That's good to know. That's good to know. So Mary Beth, if a family chooses teletherapy, and I hope many of them do, are your services covered by insurance, or is this a private pay situation?
Private pay situation, absolutely. Medicare also actually provides, they cover the services as well. And most commercial insurance companies will as well. I particularly work with Anthem Blue Cross, but Medicare also provides these services. And I think a lot of clients don't realize that Medicare will provide these services. It is a covered benefit for them.
That's good.
Yeah, that's something that we need to talk about. You know, I know in our situation, it never even crossed my mind. Sean, how about you? Like, it never just crossed my mind that, you know, getting mom help with a therapist, you know, I don't know, you get so, as a family, you're in this firefighting mode, you know, you're just trying to survive. And that's why it's so important for Sean and I. I'm sorry?
No, I was saying for most clients, if they have a secondary insurance as well, there's no out-of-pocket expense for most clients.
That's so good to know. You know, I think it's so important for Sean and I and the Alzheimer's Caregiver Alliance to just keep, like, you know, keep these conversations going and let families know what their options are, because we certainly didn't think about some of these things, and, you know, it hasn't been that long. You know, I will tell you that my mom, as the caregiver, her health was declining so rapidly because of the stress of caring for my dad in a senior community that wasn't really equipped to handle someone with Alzheimer's disease, and he used to wander. So every day they were calling me, or they were calling my mom and saying, you have to keep track of your husband. He's wandering. And of all the conversations we had with the physician about her needing to take care of herself, her needing to put my dad in memory care so that she could take a break, or she was going to die before he did, it was never once recommended to us that we consider therapy. We never had that conversation. So we definitely need to make sure that families think about this, and think about this really early on when they're thinking about, their entire plan.
I think something I just want to add that's really important to note is that we don't only provide counseling for the older persons. We also provide counseling for caregivers of all ages, because there is such a need there as well because of caregiver stress, worry, anxiety, those type of things that, with insurance, with private pay, we also can provide that additional support to them as well.
That's great.
So, Amanda, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? And I believe you focus on Virginia, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody is outside of your area, what's the best way for someone to, because we're national, and what's the best way for people to get a hold of support from you guys, not only in Virginia, but what advice could you give somebody outside of Virginia?
Yeah, so our contact information is not only on our website, wecaremanagement.com, but you can find it on Facebook, you can find it on LinkedIn, on Psychology Today. Psychology Today, that's what I was going to recommend for anyone internationally, that if you are looking for a counselor, any type of counselor, Psychology Today is a really well-known resource for mental health clinicians, and it's very helpful because it shows what insurances clinicians accept, it shows their specialty, and so on there. When you find Mary Beth and myself on there, you can see that we specialize in older persons and caregivers, life transitions, grief, those type of things. So I would say Psychology Today is the #1 resource for people all over the United States.
Awesome. That's excellent. So I want to thank you for coming on today. A great service what you guys are doing. And we lived through this, right? I wish, our father passed away in 2013. So we didn't have all FaceTiming technology really back in 11 and 12, and 13 that they have today. And I know with my mom, we're fortunate that she has technology like FaceTime, and we can call her and have that video connection with her. So we appreciate you guys coming on and talking about this.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And nice meeting you, Mary Beth.
Nice meeting you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sean, thanks again.
No problem, Michelle.
Another great conversation. I really wish we would have known some of this back in our day, for sure.
It was a different time, just a short time ago, right? I mean, 2012, 13 was only 7-8 years ago, and things have changed so much since then.
Yeah, I think it's just, we have to keep the conversations going. We have to let these caregivers at home know what's available to them, and their children who are, maybe not even in the same state, sometimes across the world, but there is technology that they can really continue to be involved and help care from long distance, and that's pretty encouraging.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea of making sure you're intentional about all this, right? Because it's so easy to, I'll call them today and I'll call them tomorrow, and the next, a whole week goes by and you're like, oh, I forgot to call, but almost making it a daily thing to check in. And now the technology is so easy. You can just pick up the phone or open your laptop and have a 5-second or 2-minute video conversation. And I love the thing about the video, because I know now that, we're using it. I'm using video almost exclusively for every single thing I do, especially internal for my companies. I don't call anybody anymore. I'm doing video now that we're like set up at home. Everything is video. I mean, you know this, right? I talk to you several times a day, and we're video conferencing nonstop. Just that facial interaction is so key to what we do every day in our work. It's even more key in taking care of the caregivers and connecting with them physically.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit this afternoon. I think, we hear this from a lot of people that are saying, hard times bring out stronger people, right? We'll come out of this stronger than before. But I think in the case of what we're doing and the community that we serve, we are learning every single day, every minute, ways that we can really help the caregiver at home that we're going to continue to use when the world opens back up again. It really is kind of a blessing, honestly. I think we're going to really be able to provide services and things for caregivers in a way that's not been done before. And that can continue. That's not going to stop when everything opens back up again. And it's super exciting.
No, I think that's the most exciting thing about this. And there is a silver lining, right? Crisis breeds innovation. And I think that we're going to get back to a normal world. We're going to get back to physical connectivity. We're going to get back to, memory cafes and things like that. But now there's going to be this whole new additional normal, And, we're seeing it already. I'm seeing it already in the workforce where things are just becoming normal. Like, this will all settle in. And when we actually start going back to what our old normal was, we're going to have this whole new normal. And I know that new normal is being overused right now, but you're going to have this, people are going to be so used to using video technology and Zoom and things like that, that it's going to be integrated into their lives now. Almost, you won't be able to separate it anymore.
Right.
So
but it's great for us and the senior population. They didn't grow up with the technology like we did. And so, we have this tremendous opportunity, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, good. Well, that was
all
fun.
Right.
So
yeah, well, thanks again. A little technical problem in the beginning, but we got it figured out.
Hey, that's the way it works.
That's right. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.